Aries, if you're hearing these words right now, allow yourself to pause for just one breath. Something quietly unsettling has been present in your living space lately. Not loud, not dramatic, but strong enough to make your soul feel less safe than it used to. Not because there is something wrong with the house, but because you have changed. And when Aries changes, old places can no longer hide the truth. In the next few minutes, I want to take you into a very specific moment in time. Friday, the 16th. For Aries, this is a moment when all disguises begin to fall away. You will understand why the feeling of having to leave is no longer just a passing thought, but a powerful call from destiny itself. And more importantly, you will realize that this movement is not taking anything away from you. It is guiding Aries toward the place where your soul truly belongs. If right now you feel a quiet but clear knowing inside you that you are ready for a new chapter of life, I invite you to leave a very gentle confirmation in the comments. I am ready to step into the place my soul belongs. This is not just a sentence. For Aries, this is how you align your will with the current that is already carrying you forward. And before we go any further, ask yourself one honest question. Why is this feeling appearing now? Why is it speaking specifically to Aries? And why is it happening at a moment when everything inside you no longer wants to stay silent? The answer lives deep inside the core of Aries astrology, and that is exactly where your true journey begins. Aries was never born to stay too long in a space that has grown old in energy. This is not an emotional opinion. It is a clear astrological truth that has followed you from your very first breath. When I think of Aries, I think of movement. Not loud movement, not reckless motion, but a deep inner motion like a fire that refuses to die when it has been covered for too long. Aries is ruled by Mars, the planet of action, beginnings, boundaries, and raw truth. Mars does not negotiate with dead energy. It does not stay out of habit. It does not remain because of memories or fear of change. And when Mars is active within you, you experience life not only through logic, but through your entire body, through your heartbeat, through a restless tension you cannot fully explain when you are placed in a space that no longer reflects who you truly are. I have observed many Aries over more than 2 decades working with astrology and human psychology. And there is one pattern that appears again and again. Before Aries decides to leave, the body speaks first. A heaviness when returning home. An exhaustion without a clear cause. Small irritations that surprise even you. This is not you being difficult. This is your soul reacting to a loss of alignment. Aries often doesn't recognize this immediately. You're far more capable of silent endurance than people assume. You rationalize. You tell yourself, it's fine. Everyone goes through this. I'm just tired. But Mars does not allow pretending to last forever. When your living environment no longer reflects your true self, your body and mind respond before logic can catch up. That is when truth begins to knock. There is something I want to say very directly to Aries, with deep respect for your path. You are not born to endlessly adapt. You were born to begin. And every true beginning requires a departure. Not a departure in anger. Not a departure in destruction, but a departure in awareness. When you stay too long in an energetically expired space, you do not only restrict yourself, you slowly lose connection to the living fire inside you. Human beings do not only need shelter, they need a place that allows them to grow as they truly are. This is a profound human lesson that Aries often learns through movement. A house may protect you from rain and wind, but if it forces you to shrink, to stay silent in the face of what is wrong, to adapt, to stagnation, then it is no longer nourishing your soul. And Aries, more than any other sign, you feel this deeply. I have seen many Aries stay out of responsibility, out of loyalty to others, out of fear of hurting someone. But the longer you stay, the more your energy drains. You lose the natural enthusiasm that is one of your greatest gifts. You begin to doubt yourself. And this is when your inner fire no longer burns bright. It smolders quietly, painfully, exhausted. Not because you are, Weak, but because you are living in the wrong environment. There's a sentence I often return to when speaking to Aries in moments like this. You are not leaving because you are weak. You are leaving because you have grown. Maturity is understanding that your deepest loyalty is not to a place, but to your inner truth. Maturity is admitting that some things once fit, but no longer do. And for Aries, growth often arrives as a very clear decision, not to stay where your soul keeps shrinking. If as you listen now, your chest tightens just a little, allow yourself to be honest. Have you ever stayed in a place your heart was quietly trying to escape? A place where each day you had to convince yourself, I'll get used to it. If this question touches you, do not answer with logic. Listen with your body. Aries always knows the truth before you allow yourself to say it. And if these words carry meaning for you, allow yourself to leave a small sign. A like, a comment, a quiet acknowledgement that you're listening to yourself. For Aries, every small action is a way of putting your will into motion. You do not need a loud declaration. You only need honesty. The universe hears that clearly. What matters most is this: the urge to leave is never random. It does not appear on just any day. It arrives when all conditions are ripe, when you have learned what you needed to learn, when you are strong enough to release familiarity as a crutch, and when you are honest enough to see that you deserve a space that reflects who you are becoming. Aries is the sign of beginnings, but every beginning requires an ending. Not an ending filled with pain, but an ending filled with clarity. Clarity that you are not running away. You are moving forward. Clarity that you are not breaking things. You are restructuring your life at a higher level of awareness. And when you understand this, guilt begins to dissolve, replaced by a strange, quiet peace. You may not yet know where you are going. You may not have a perfect plan. That does not make you wrong. Aries does not need to see the entire road to take the first step. You only need to know that you cannot remain still. And the moment you admit that, the current of destiny begins to shift. Ask yourself one final honest question. If you stayed here one more year, who would you become? Would you grow brighter or continue shrinking to fit the space around you? The answer to this question matters more than any advice I could ever give. Because no, one understands the soul of Aries better than you do. And this is the moment I want you to notice something very subtle. When the feeling of leaving becomes clear, time itself begins to speak. It is not random that specific dates start appearing in your mind. It is not random that you feel an invisible deadline quietly approaching. For Aries, time is not just a calendar. It is an astrological signal, a reminder that an old cycle has already completed. If you are here, listening to these words, right now, there's a strong chance you're standing in front of a door. Not a loud door, not a forceful one, but a door that cannot be ignored. And that door is tied to a very specific moment, a day when the energy of truth can no longer be hidden. A day when the Mars within you refuses to tolerate delay any longer. That is why, in the next part, we need to talk about the element of time that is being powerfully activated for Aries. Because Friday, the 16th, is not just another date on the calendar. For you, it is a turning point, a moment when truth, living space, and destiny begin to intersect very clearly. Aries, there are times in life when time no longer moves the way it used to. It slows down, it sharpens, and it carries a feeling that is hard to name, as if something is gently touching you, reminding you that it is time to face the truth. For you, those moments often arrive on days ruled by Venus, and especially on Fridays. Friday, in astrology, is not just the end of a week. It is the day of Venus, the planet of values, of belonging, of harmony between the inner world and the outer one. Venus does not force. Venus does not rush. Venus simply asks very softly, do you still feel nourished here? And for Aries, when that question appears, it is never accidental. I have witnessed many Aries begin to feel unsettled on Fridays, even when there is no clear external reason. Everything on the surface seems fine. Life continues. Responsibilities are met. But inside, there's a strange emptiness, a sense that your living space no longer holds the person you are becoming. That is when Venus begins to do her work. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply enough that you can no longer ignore it. And then, the number 16 appears. In mysticism, 16 is not a comfortable number. It does not carry the safety of familiar structures. It is the number of conscious collapse. The moment when what was built on foundations that no longer fit must dissolve, so the truth can be revealed. 16 does not destroy to cause pain. It destroys to liberate. But that liberation rarely arrives with noise. It comes in silence, not in the dramatic events people often expect. For Aries, when Friday aligns with the energy of 16, the area most strongly activated is the home, the family, the living space, the themes of the fourth house. This is the deepest region of the soul, the place of memory, of emotional safety, of roots. And that is why, when the fourth house awakens, emotions do not arrive all at once. They come slowly, gently, but unmistakably real. You may begin to notice that you no longer want to stay home as long. You may feel short of breath, even though the room looks the same. You may realize you grow quieter every time you return. Not because someone is hurting you directly, but because that space has been holding too many unspoken truths. And Venus, in all her gentleness, is simply inviting you to look at them. When Venus touches the true point of Mars, your living space stops being just a place to stay. It becomes a mirror reflecting the truth you have been avoiding. Mars within you wants to act, to move forward, to live according to your nature. Venus asks quietly, does this place still fit the person you are becoming? When these two energies meet, the tension does not explode. It spreads. It seeps into the smallest details of everyday life. I want you to understand something important here. Truth does not arrive to punish you. It arrives to free you. But true liberation rarely feels pleasant at first. It often comes with a vague sadness, a quiet sense of loss, a feeling that you are about to say goodbye to something that once felt familiar. Some walls do not fall with noise. They fall through prolonged silence. In Aries, you feel that silence deeply. You can endure noise, conflict, even hardship, but you cannot endure stagnation. You cannot endure the feeling of living in a place that no longer responds to the fire within you. Many Aries begin to blame themselves when thoughts of leaving arise. You think you're ungrateful, too sensitive, making something bigger than it is. But the truth is this: Venus never activates when things are still right. The energy of Friday and the number 16 only appear when a cycle has reached its natural conclusion. Listen to your emotions honestly. Lately, have you felt that you no longer belong where you live? Not in a material sense, but in a soul sense. Do you still feel truly rested when you return home? Or are you there out of habit, out of responsibility, out of fear of change? You do not need to answer this now. You only need the courage to ask it. If these words touch you, allow yourself to pause and soften. You do not need to act immediately. Venus does not demand urgency. Venus asks for honesty. And for Aries, honesty is sometimes harder than action, but it is the first step toward all true liberation. You may be trying to keep everything intact: the home, the family, the sense of stability. But deep inside, you already know a truth is growing. A truth that this space has completed its role in your journey. It taught you what you needed to learn. It protected you for a season. And now, it is quietly saying goodbye. I have seen many Aries try to ignore this signal. They stay a little longer, hoping the feeling will pass. But Venus does not forget. And 16 does not allow endless delay. Truth, when unacknowledged, will continue to find ways to surface, not through storms, but through a growing sense of estrangement from the place you once called home. If you're listening now and feel a deep resonance inside, allow yourself to express it. You can leave a brief comment just to acknowledge that you are listening to yourself. Or you can share this message with someone you know who may be feeling the same. Not to convince anyone, but to remind one another that truth is far less frightening than we imagine. What I want you to carry with you from this part is not fear, but relief. Relief because you have not gone the wrong way. Relief because your sense of unease actually means something. And relief because Venus always leads through love, even when that love asks you to let go. But the next question is the one that truly matters. If this living space no longer fits you, what has really been hidden all this time? What within you, within your family, within these familiar walls, has been waiting to be named? And that is exactly where we're going next. Because leaving is never just about leaving a place. It always begins by looking directly at the truth that is coming into view. Aries, there's something very few people say out loud, yet almost everyone has felt at some point in their life. Living space is never neutral. A home is not made only of walls, a roof, and windows. It is soaked with memories, with words that were spoken, and with words that were never said. Every room remembers. Every corner holds emotion. And for those who carry strong energy like Aries, you feel this more clearly than most. In astrology and depth psychology, the home, especially the realm of the fourth house, represents the most primal emotional world of a human being. It is the place where you do not need to prove anything. The place where you are allowed to be vulnerable, allowed to take off the outer armor. But when that space no longer allows you to be yourself, when you bring all your restraint home with you, that home slowly becomes a place where unresolved energy accumulates. Aries has a very distinct trait. You're not good at hiding your emotions for long. You may stay silent, but silence is not acceptance. It is compression. And compressed energy, ruled by Mars, never disappears. It only waits for the right moment to burst outward. Some Aries begin to feel irritated by very small things at home. Some feel uncomfortable with the silence itself. Some feel the urge to be out as much as possible, just to escape a suffocating feeling they cannot name. The truth hidden within a living space is not always a dramatic secret. It is not always a loud conflict or an obvious betrayal. Sometimes, it is simply the feeling that you have held yourself back for too long to keep the peace. Holding back a sentence so no one gets hurt. Holding back a reaction to avoid tension. Holding back a very real desire of your own because you believe this is better for everyone. I have met many Aries carrying this quiet exhaustion. They do not speak up because they do not want to be the problem. They choose silence because they believe love and responsibility means sacrifice. But what few people realize is this. Every time you choose silence against your inner truth, you leave an energetic imprint in your living space. Over time, those imprints accumulate, and the home stops being a place of restoration and becomes a place that reminds you daily of a life you are not fully living. A space that requires you to stay silent for too long is no longer a sanctuary. A sanctuary is not a place without conflict. A sanctuary is a place where you are allowed to speak the truth without losing yourself. When you walk into a home and feel yourself shrinking, watching every word, every emotion, that is a sign the imbalance has been there for a long time. For Aries, compressed energy rarely shows itself gently. It may surface as sudden anger, as an urge to burn everything down, or as a rapid decision to leave that even surprises you. But understand this, that is not impulsiveness. It is the natural response of a soul that has endured silence for too long. There's a deeply human lesson here, and I want you to sit with it for a moment. Being honest with yourself is an act of courage, more courageous than endurance, more courageous than pleasing others. Because honesty means accepting that things may change. And change always frightens people. But the truth is, there is no healing in continuing to deny your own emotions. You may have asked yourself before, if I speak up, will I hurt someone? But the question Aries often forgets to ask is, if I remain silent, am I hurting myself? There is no right or wrong answer to this, only honesty. And that honesty will show you the path forward. Homes carry memory, but memory does not always need to be preserved intact. Some memories deserve respect, and some memories must be released. When you live in a space filled with too many unresolved truths, you are living with the past every day. And Aries, you are the sign of the present and the future. You are not born to be trapped in old emotional loops. Perhaps the truth you are avoiding is not about others, but about yourself. The truth that you have changed. The truth that what once felt safe now feels confining. The truth that you're no longer who you were years ago. And if your living space does not evolve with you, it becomes a daily reminder of that mismatch. If these words touch you, ask yourself very gently, have you ever chosen silence to preserve a place called home? You do not need to answer now. You do not need to explain to anyone. Simply having the courage to look at the question means you have already begun a powerful healing process. For Aries, silence is never a sustainable state. You can endure it for a while, but the fire within you does not allow pretending to last forever. And when Aries stays silent for too long, the universe acts on your behalf, not to punish you, but to protect you from continuing to betray yourself. The universe has its own way of bringing truth into the light, sometimes through a small event that touches the exact wound, sometimes through a feeling you can no longer ignore, and sometimes through circumstances that force a change of place, even before your mind feels ready. But trust this, no movement happens without a deeper reason behind it. What matters most now is gentleness with yourself. You are not wrong for feeling tired. You are not selfish for wanting to live according to your real emotions. And you have not failed because a once familiar space no longer fits you. You're simply growing. And for Aries, growth always walks hand in hand with truth. If this resonates, allow yourself to connect. A comment, a share, or simply your presence here. Each one is a way of acknowledging that you are listening to yourself. Not for anyone else to see, but so you are no longer alone on this journey. Because from the moment truth is named, everything begins to move. And when truth in the living space is no longer hidden, greater forces step in. That is when not only emotions, but destiny itself begins to rearrange. And from here, a chain of irreversible change slowly comes into view. Aries, there are moments in life when you no longer feel like you are choosing. Everything unfolds as if it was arranged long ago, waiting only for you to become aware. The feeling is not loud, not dramatic, but absolute. And when it arrives, you know you cannot return to the way things were. That is the moment Mars begins to speak. Mars does not whisper. It does not negotiate. It does not wait for human hesitation. Mars is the moment your heartbeat quickens when you can no longer pretend that everything is fine. It is the moment you stand in a familiar space, look around, and suddenly realize you have been here for too long. Not because this place is bad, but because you have changed. And when Mars is strongly activated in the birth chart of Aries, that change can no longer be delayed. I have seen many Aries enter this phase with a very human kind of confusion. You begin to question yourself. Am I rushing? Am I making things more complicated than they need to be? Should I wait a little longer until everything becomes clear? But this is what I want you to hear slowly, deeply. When Mars activates the tense angles of your life, waiting is no longer wisdom. It becomes self-betrayal. Aries is not allowed to delay at times like this. Not because you lack patience, but because your soul has already moved far ahead of your mind. There are decisions you cannot fully understand with thought. You can only feel them through your body, through the heaviness when you wake each morning, through the restlessness that has no clear cause, through your own eyes in the mirror, when you know you are no longer living in alignment with your inner truth. I want to say something very important to you, and I say this with deep respect for the journey of Aries. You're not being pushed away. You're being called forward, not by some outside force, but by your own deepest nature, by the fire you have carried since birth. A fire that does not allow you to live a half-life, half true, half false. You may have tried to stay. You may have tried to fix things. You may have convinced yourself that if you just try a little longer, everything will settle. But Mars does not care about a little longer. Mars only cares about truth. And the truth here is this. If you stay, you will continue to lose yourself bit by bit. No one sees it. No one names it. But you feel it clearly. Change does not always need your permission. It only needs your readiness. The readiness to admit that you cannot continue living the same way. The readiness to accept that the path ahead may not yet be clear, but the path behind you no longer belongs to you. This is a profound life lesson, not only for Aries, but for anyone who has clung to familiarity out of fear of the unknown. Some people believe that leaving means failure, but I have never seen an Aries leave at the right time and become weaker. On the contrary, I have seen them stand taller, breathe deeper, lie more truthfully, because when you stop spending energy on endurance, your inner power begins to return. You no longer have to fight yourself. You're not losing a home. You're finding yourself. This may sound simple, but its meaning runs deep. A home is only a physical space, but yourself, that is what you carry for life. When you choose to leave, you do not abandon your values. You only leave behind what no longer has space for the person you are becoming. There may be moments of sadness. Sadness for memories. Sadness for hopes that once existed. Sadness for the old version of you, the one who believed this place would be forever. Allow yourself to grieve. Mars does not forbid emotion. It only refuses to let you. Remain trapped inside it. Sadness does not make you weak. Staying too long in sadness is what drains your strength. If you're listening now and feel your heart beating a little faster, that is a sign of truth. Not a frightening truth, but a liberating one. And if this resonates, allow yourself to pass that courage forward. A like, a share, not to support me, but to remind yourself that you are choosing bravery, even when the road ahead is not fully visible yet. Mars does not promise ease, but it promises aliveness. It promises that when you move, you will feel the ground beneath your feet more clearly. You will know you are living, not merely existing. And for Aries, that is everything. You may have to leave sooner than you expected. Circumstances may push you toward a decision your mind has not fully prepared for. But remember this, your soul has been ready for a long time. The dreams, the passing thoughts, the unnamed sensations, they were all signals. You simply can no longer ignore them. I have seen many Aries walk away from an old space with almost nothing in their hands, yet their eyes shone brighter than ever, because they knew they had chosen correctly, not according to other people's standards, but according to their inner truth. And that choice opened doors they never imagined. Ask yourself very gently, if you do not leave now, what will you continue to sacrifice? Peace, freedom, joy. There is no right or wrong answer, only an honest one. And Mars always stands on the side of truth. You do not need to know exactly where you are going. You only need to know that you cannot stay. For Aries, the first step matters more than the perfect map, because once you begin moving, the path reveals itself. Not all at once, but enough to keep you from losing your way. And that is why the next question matters so deeply. When you have dared to leave, when you have allowed Mars to lead, when you have chosen truth over familiarity, where will you go next? Not just to a new location, but into a new version of yourself. A version that no longer stays silent, no longer compresses itself, no longer shrinks to fit spaces that were never meant to hold you. Aries, there is a strange moment that comes after you leave. Not immediately, not on the first day, but on a very ordinary morning when you wake up somewhere else, or even in a temporary place, and suddenly you realize your chest feels lighter. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer fighting yourself. In astrology, a new living space always carries a new frequency. A new home is not just a different point on a map. It is a different energy field, a different rhythm, a quiet permission that says, you are allowed to become someone new here. And for Aries, this shift in frequency changes far more than you might expect. You are the sign of beginnings. You were born to open paths, to experiment, to live truthfully. And yet, paradoxically, many Aries have lived in spaces that force them to suppress themselves, to adapt, to slow down, not by choice, but by circumstance. When you leave, the first feeling is not excitement. It is a healing silence, a silence without weight, a silence that finally allows you to hear yourself. A new home is a new frequency. That does not mean everything will be perfect, but it does mean that the challenges you face will no longer cost you yourself. At a new frequency, you don't have to explain as much. You don't have to stay on guard all the time. You don't have to shrink to fit into someone or something. And that release, that absence of constant tension, is the very first sign of rebirth. For Aries, the period after leaving is almost always tied to independence. Not just financial independence, not just practical independence, but emotional independence. You begin to trust your own inner signals more. You begin to make decisions without asking for permission from other people's emotions. You begin to take responsibility for your life in a way that is mature, quiet, and deeply grounded. I have never seen an Aries leave at the right time and not become stronger. And I don't say this from blind optimism, but from very real observation. You may need time to stabilize. You may have days of doubt, nights when you ask yourself if you did the right thing. But deep inside, something has changed permanently. You're no longer betraying your own truth. Rebirth does not mean becoming a completely different person. Rebirth means returning to who you were before you learned to stay silent in order to survive. In a new space, you will notice small things. You smile more easily. You breathe more deeply. You sleep more soundly. And sometimes, you will be surprised to realize that you are no longer angry about things that once hurt you deeply. Not because you forgot, but because you moved through them. There is a profound human lesson hidden within Aries' cycles of movement. When someone is brave enough to change, society gains a person who lives truthfully. And a person who lives truthfully, no matter how quietly, creates impact. You don't need to teach anyone. You don't need to prove anything. Simply by living in alignment, others feel it. When you choose truth, you teach the world how to respect you. Not through words, but through presence. When you no longer accept spaces that require you to suppress yourself, you quietly set a new standard. A standard that says love does not mean self-erasure. Stability does not mean stagnation. Maturity means knowing when it is time to leave. In a new living space, you begin to build new habits. They may seem small, a quiet corner, time reserved just for yourself, an arrangement that reflects who you are now, not who you used to be. These small things carry great power. They speak to your subconscious and say, you are allowed to be here. You are allowed to be yourself. There may be moments when you miss the old place. You miss what was familiar. You miss older versions of yourself. That is completely natural, but you will notice something important. The nostalgia no longer pulls you back. It passes and dissolves because you know you chose correctly, not by society's standards, but by the rhythm of your soul. For Aries, freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is no longer reacting to what does not belong to you. And in a new life cycle, you will feel that freedom clearly. You no longer need to prove your strength. You simply live, and strength radiates naturally. If you're listening now, ask yourself very gently, if you could choose your living space again, what energy would you want it to carry? Peace, honesty, warmth, or simply a place that does not require your silence? You don't need an answer right now, but this question is a seed for your next cycle. And if these words resonate, allow yourself to connect. A comment, a share, not to affirm anything to others, but to affirm to yourself that you are entering a new chapter with awareness. Each connection anchors you more deeply into the new frequency you are building. The most beautiful part of a new life cycle is not what you gain externally. It is how you treat yourself. You stop forcing yourself to endure. You stop treating staying as an obligation. You begin to respect your own boundaries. And that respect naturally changes how others treat you as well. You may not see immediate results, but you will feel the direction. A direction that no longer conflicts with your heart. A direction where each step matters, slow or fast. And for Aries, that is the clearest sign that you are living in alignment with your true cycle. And now, it is time to close this message. Not with a prediction, but with a very human acknowledgement. You have moved through a difficult phase. You dared to face the truth. You dared to leave when it was necessary. And because of that, The new cycle you are entering is not random. It is the result of courage, of honesty, of love for yourself. Carry this with you as you move forward. You are not starting over from zero. You are starting from understanding. And for Aries, there is no stronger foundation than that. Dear Aries, before we close this journey, I want to pause and offer a deep thank you. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for listening not only with your ears, but with your heart and with honesty toward yourself. Not everyone has the courage to sit with messages like this. And the fact that you are here says a great deal about who you are. Aries, you were not born to remain stuck. You were born to open paths. You carry the fire of beginnings, of truth, of living through action. And sometimes a new path does not begin with a dramatic forward leap. Sometimes it begins very quietly, in a moment you are awake enough to close an old door. Not in resentment, not in anger, but in clarity and self-respect. If at any point in this journey a sentence touched you, if you felt your soul gnawed gently in recognition, I invite you to act now, right here, right now. Leave a short but powerful confirmation in the comments. I choose truth. I choose freedom. This is not just a phrase. It is a commitment to yourself, a declaration that you no longer accept half-living, that you no longer stay silent to fit into spaces that were never meant for you. And if this energy feels real and healing to you, share it. Like the video, send it to someone you know is standing at a similar crossroads, not to convince them to leave, but to remind them that truth is always the beginning of healing. Each share could be a small light for someone who feels lost. If you haven't subscribed yet, allow yourself to stay with us a little longer, because the journey of Aries does not end with leaving. It is only just beginning. And in the next video, we will talk about what Aries receives after having the courage to leave. Not loss, but a very special gift, a reward that only arrives when you are brave enough to step beyond what is familiar. Stay with us, keep walking with us, and most importantly, keep living in alignment with the fire within you. Because when Aries lives in truth, it is not only your life that changes, the world around you begins to shift as well.